Hey, family. Aleesha Barlow is my new friend. Aleesha created Tell Somebody Inc., which is an organization that works to end child abuse and silenced abuse of any kind. Her Tell Somebody movement brings awareness to parents that sexual abuse can and does happen. Believe it or not, many families don't believe it. This is a sensitive conversation that sadly must continue to be had. Now, when I talk with Aleesha, I want you to carry into this conversation what she has said in her own words. I am a survivor of child abuse. I was molested by my maternal grandfather, and at age 6, I told my aunt that her father was touching me inappropriately. She told my mother. They confronted my grandfather. He admitted it. I was told to keep it a secret from the police and from my own father, with the promise that the abuse would stop. Unfortunately, he continued, and I never spoke up again. After 20 years, my father asked me if I had ever been molested in my life. I told him yes. I felt all the weight, burden, and shame I had been carrying all those years immediately lifted off my shoulders. And so I want all survivors to feel that you are not alone. Don't take it to the grave. Tell somebody it's time to heal. Those are Aleesha's own words from her life. She shares the circumstances around that. And more importantly, more delightedly, I might say, the solutions that can happen to help healing begin. Please welcome Aleesha Barlow. Miss Aleesha, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You know, it's a bit paradoxical to say it's a pleasure to have you today. And let me explain that while I'm deeply grateful for the work you continue to do, I am as grieved as I know you are that it is a work that must be done. And that work has to have voices heard on platforms like this one, Ask JBH. So let's smile through this, okay? Because you've got good stuff to share. And for those who don't know your story, please start at the beginning with our family about where you're comfortable to talk from.
My mother and her family are Dutch. They're from Holland. And my father is African American from Louisiana. So my trauma actually starts before me. My mother's family was racist. All they saw about Black people on the news were bad things. So when my grandfather, my mom's dad, found out that she was pregnant with me, he told her that she was stupid for having a baby by a Black person and to get an abortion. And he actually cried, but she chose to keep me. And so I'm here. From there, my mom used to drop me off at my grandparents' house whenever she needed a babysitter. They only lived 5 minutes away, so we saw them all the time, my mother's parents. When it was a holiday for school, or if my parents just wanted to go on a date night, our grandparents' house is where we went. And that's where the abuse started. My grandfather wasn't mean to me. He was actually very kind. A lot of people actually think that child abusers are mean, but they're not. They're very kind. They have a trust with the child. They have a love, a bond with the child. My grandfather taught me a lot of things. He taught me how to play the piano. He, taught me how to draw, but eventually it turned into abuse. It started off with the tickle game. He used to tickle me under my armpits, and then he slowly moved to my private areas. And when I didn't stop him, he realized that I didn't know anything about my body. And
How
that was
old
kind of
were
like the
you at
green
that
light.
time? How old were you at that time?
As young as I can remember, 2, 3, 4 years old. I was really young. Again, they only lived 5 minutes away. So since I was born, I was always over there. Yeah. So when I never stopped him and he knew it was the green light, he took it a step further. And every time my grandmother would leave to go for a walk or go to the store, he would bring me into a room in the house and he would close the door and he would touch my body. He would also ask me to touch him. He would show me adult rated pictures and magazines. And he told me that people who loved each other did these kind of things. And
This is
so
your mother's father, the man
this
who
is my
wanted you
mother's
aborted.
father.
The
Yes.
man who wanted you aborted.
Yes, the man who wanted me aborted. And so I loved my grandfather. And so I believed him when he told me that it was okay. But he did tell me to keep it a secret and to not tell anybody. And so for a long time, I did keep it a secret.
Aleesha, did your grandfather tell you why you needed to keep it a secret at that time?
No, he just said that it was something between us and that secrets were okay between people sometimes, and I didn't need to tell anybody.
And to set the picture clear, how long did this go on?
This went on for years until I was a teenager, but I told way before that. So when I was
So,
6, okay,
yeah, let's segue. So you're
okay.
somewhere around 2 or 3 years old to your earliest estimate that he began the tickle game with you.
Mhm.
Then he moved differently. He moved more penetratingly to you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Did he ever have intercourse with you, or was it always a touch and feel game?
He tried a couple of times to have intercourse with me, but I was so small and young that it hurt. So I would say no, no. And then he would stop and he would just wait until I got a little older to try again.
Did he ever successfully do that?
With his fingers, yes. His private part, no.
Okay. So, what age were you? First of all, do you have any early remember? What's your earliest remembrance of how you felt when he was doing that, even before you knew it wasn't right and wasn't good to do?
Yes, even at 2 or 3, when he was tickling me under my private areas, I had a feeling even at that young age that it wasn't okay, but I didn't know how to voice it. But I
Had
always knew deep down, it made me feel yucky inside. It made me feel dirty. Even with him telling me to keep it a secret, I believed him, but I still felt, well, why do we have to keep this a secret? So I always kind of had like a yearning for more questions, but I had nobody to ask them to.
the women in your family, including your mother and your grandmother, um, were present in your life in a real way as well. Did they ever have conversations with you as a child about your body and what was permissible and not by other people?
No,
Oh,
nobody, not my mom, not my dad, nobody.
okay, and I know we're going at this a bit clinically, but I
Mhm.
think it's important for us, even as we hold back the tears and the rage and all sorts of emotions that are attached with this, to understand the circumstance of your experience in order that it can shed light for others on their options and familiarity to their own personal experiences. Um, I've heard it said by uh, survivors of abuse that at some point it starts to feel good physically, and that is the worst place to be because it tends to get worse emotionally and mentally, and you start to adopt the burden and guilt onto yourself because of the guilt of a natural physical response to this type of touching, or in some instance penetration. Was that ever the case for you? Did you adopt the guilt onto yourself? And did it ever feel good physically and conflict mentally or emotionally for you?
Yes, definitely. I would have to say yes to all those questions. At the end of the day, your body is just a body. So if it's stimulated by your grandfather or yourself or somebody else, whether you're 5 years old or 50 years old, it's going to feel good. So yes, there were times where my grandfather did do things that did make me feel good. So yeah, it is a conflict. Of not knowing, and that affects your adulthood and your sexual nature as you get older. But yes, my whole life I carried the guilt and the shame and the dirtiness and the disgustingness until I finally told somebody at 28 years old. But yes, I felt that my whole childhood and teenage years.
Is your grandfather alive?
No.
Is your grandmother, your mother, or your aunt alive?
Yes and no. So my grandfather, when I was 20, got a rare lung disease that they don't have a cure for. So he passed away. Later on, to me, I felt like that was God, because of what he was. My grandfather was a serial pedophile. So I wasn't the first and I wasn't the last. And yes, there were many people before me, so my family did know about him. My grandmother, I was just gonna say she's 94. She is alive in an old folks home, being taken care of. My mother is alive. One of my aunts is alive. But so when I was 6 years old was the first time I felt that it was wrong and I had to tell somebody. And I didn't tell my mom, even though I should have. I told my aunt. That aunt recently just found out she had stage 4 cancer and she just passed away. And again, for me, it's hard because even though I loved her because she was my aunt, I feel like that was part of what she did because she knew my grandfather was a pedophile and she coerced other people to be quiet and keep it a secret for him. They were
So
kind of in together.
there's a lot here, several
It's a
questions
lot.
urge upon each other. I
Yeah.
mean, if they knew he was a pedophile and he had previous experiences to that end, why leave you alone with him for it to happen? Which is something I'm sure you've explored or maybe asked them or wanted to ask them. Um, Also, Aleesha, the question of um, when you consider this is your grandfather, how did you have conversations with him once you knew it was wrong? And did you ever attempt to heal the wound in discussion with him? And so I guess that would be the first question before we go to the women in your life who may have made different choices, not knowing where they were positioned or educated or able in their mind to make it.
Right.
Did you
Right.
ever have a conversation with your grandfather? This is wrong. Why did you do this? Did you ever have those kinds of conversations?
No, I never got to have those conversations because when I was told to keep it a secret, I was told at the age of 6 that if I did not keep it a secret, my grandfather was going to go to jail and he was either going to die in jail because of how they treat child abusers, or he said he would kill himself. And I was also told that my dad, if he found out, would kill my grandfather, and then my dad would go to jail. So as a 6-year-old, I took all that burden and guilt and didn't tell anybody. So in my mind growing up, because I was never allowed to speak on it, I never got to explore the feelings of, hey, this was wrong. I would like to confront somebody, because I had to keep it bottled in. And just like, there's a lot of survivors, but there's not a lot of people talking about it. So I grew up thinking I was the only person that it happened to. And so I didn't know how bad it really was. So no, I never got to confront him about it.
How old were you when he last touched you inappropriately?
Probably about 13.
That's a
Um,
long time.
Unfortunately, I have a younger brother who's 4 years younger than me. And when the abuse stopped with me, it actually progressed to him. A lot of child molesters, they say when a child has reached puberty and teenage years, sometimes they will then go try to find a younger victim. And that's what happened in my case.
And your mother and your aunties knew that was going on with your brother as well.
Yes, yes.
You did not live in the same house as him, though.
I did live in the
You
same
did.
house as
It
him.
gave
I
him,
did.
okay. It gave him
Yeah,
access. Okay.
yeah.
So you
I'll
were
I'll get
20.
to him when we talk about him because he has a really big part in how I was even able to start tell somebody. It was actually him and his bravery of coming out and finally telling what happened to him that allowed me to open up and help others.
Well, we're actually there now because
Okay.
it is important
Okay.
to talk about how you ended that silence and how it
Okay.
changed you to do that. So let's go there now.
Okay. So right before I get there, I just want to say that when I was 6 years old, I was in the car with one of my aunts. My mom has two sisters, so it's three of them. And I asked her, I said, I was 6, and I said, Aunt, are people allowed to touch your private areas? And she said, no, why? And I said, because my grandfather, your dad, touches me. And she said, really? She said, no, I will confront him. That's wrong. And he's not supposed to do it. And so we were actually on our way to a family trip to my grandfather's house. He owned a couple of lake houses. And so that's why I told, because we were on our way to spend the weekend with him. And I just didn't want him to touch me anymore.
And how old were you then?
I was 6.
Mm-hmm.
When we got to the lake house, I was scared out of my mind because I told a secret that my grandfather told me not to. So I ran upstairs and I hid, and I watched my aunt take my mother and her other sister and their dad, my grandfather, outside, and they walked away so that my grandmother couldn't hear. And when they came back, I thought everybody was going to be really mad and angry because I told a secret, but it was the opposite. My grandfather and my aunt and my mom, they were all laughing and having a good time. So I was confused. And we spent the weekend with them. My grandfather didn't touch me. But when I got home, my mother told me at 6 that she heard what happened to me and that they confronted my grandfather, and he told them that he did do it. He admitted to them that he touched me, but he said that the devil made him do it. And my aunt, who just passed away from cancer, she said she was into God. And so she gave him a Bible. And she said, if you ever feel like touching Aleesha again, you have to read the Bible. And if you touch her again, we're going to send you to jail. And that's what my mom told me. So she told me he admitted it, but she told me not to tell. Don't tell your dad. Don't tell the police, but it will stop. So yes, I was still brought around my grandfather. The abuse still continued. My mom and her family never asked me after going over there again, was the abuse continuing? So when it comes to my brother speaking up,
Before
I,
you speak to your
okay.
brother speaking
Mm-hmm.
up, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Do you believe or do you have any knowledge of whether or not your grandfather had abused his daughters this way?
Yes. So my mother and her sisters never told me, but as an adult, a couple of years ago, my mother and one of my aunts agreed to sit down with me and they let me interview them. I actually have a YouTube video, and they both said that they vaguely remember being sexually abused by their father. Just to take it one step further, my mom and her two sisters, I found out, were sexually abused by their grandfather. which was
Was
their
that
dad's
his
dad.
father?
Yes. And when they were younger, they told their parents, which was my grandfather. And my grandfather told them to keep it a secret, and their abuse continued. So they
So they
did
were
to,
abused by their grandfather and their father.
yes.
And did they ever talk about their mother's conversation or response or proactiveness on their behalf?
No, their mother told them, just like my family told me to keep it a secret from my grandma, their mom told them to keep it a secret from their grandma. So sexual abuse, what I found out, is a generational curse, and it takes somebody strong enough to come in and break that cycle. So that's what I was.
Even if we think that when you decided to tell your mother and aunt, they did not so much choose empathy, perhaps not knowing how to handle this hugely intimate yet violating relationship was their case. But how were they with each other, knowing, looking back and knowing that they shared that secret long before you? And did you're suggesting to me, or you're saying to me, they never explained why they felt it okay to leave you and your brother or any child in his presence alone?
Yes. So my mother told me that she left me in his presence because she didn't believe he would abuse me. And when he
Mm,
said he would stop, she said that she believed him.
mm.
Um, my aunt that recently died of cancer, when I finally did get to confront my family members, her response to me was, well, it happened to me when I was younger, get over it. And she hung up in my face. So that's something that a lot of people didn't heal from. She didn't heal from it, even though she told me to get over it. She never got over it because she never got the help that she needed. I just will say that, yes, they were manipulated by their father. He threatened them with violence as far as him killing himself. But my grandfather was also a wealthy man. He had 4 or 5 houses. He would get a brand new car, drive it for a month, and then give it to one of his daughters. When we moved to a new city when I was 7, my grandfather gave my mom the $50,000 down payment for the house. When I was younger, my grandfather used to give me $20 every time he saw me. When my own parents couldn't buy me things, my grandfather bought me the $300 Barbie dream house with the working elevator. He bought me the Super Nintendo game system with 50 games. My grandfather threatened his kids with, if they told on him, they wouldn't get an inheritance. So it wasn't until I was older that I realized that money was involved and money was into play. So I will just say this again about my aunt that just passed away from stage 4 cancer. Not only did I tell her about my abuse, and she was the first person I told at age 6, but I found out that my younger brother, when he finally told, he was 10. And you know who he told? He told that same aunt that I did. So it's so crazy that me and my brother had more of a connection and felt more of a safety with this aunt than our own mom. And my aunt told my brother the same thing they told me, to keep it a secret, and his abuse continued.
Did
So
your brother tell you separately from them at age 10?
no.
Or when did he first tell you himself? And was
So
that when you broke the silence?
yes, 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 yes. So again, I grew up feeling ugly, insecure. I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't have friends. I acted out. I was the class clown. I was always trying to be funny to hide my pain. And when I finally got older, I really wanted to tell, and I just didn't know how to start telling people. I knew I had to tell my dad first. My mom actually in 2015, after being married to my dad for 30 years, decided to get a divorce from him. She said that she met somebody else. So when she left, I thought about finally telling my dad what happened to me, because I had been holding this secret for so long to hold my family together. That is a reason why a lot of people don't tell about their abuse, because 95% of child abusers are a family member or close friend, and you don't want to be the black sheep of the family sending a family member to jail by telling. So since a lot of people don't tell, I'm sorry. Oh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a big
Oh, oh
thing.
yeah. Okay, I got it. Yeah, so a lot of people don't want to tell because they don't want to break up their family. I didn't want to tell my dad because I didn't want my dad to get mad at my mom and now divorce my mom, because now I would have felt like that was my fault. But since my mom decided to divorce my dad when I was 28, she was able to break that freedom that allowed us to speak up. So yes, I really believe in God. I would just say that when I was younger, I didn't believe in God. I used to cuss him out in my room when I was growing up. I was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and I used to look up and say, F you, God, why is my life like this and nobody else's life like this? Because my parents didn't teach me about God. But as I got older, I found him in my own, and I see how he works. And for 7 days straight, I told my cousin, I want to tell my dad about my abuse. I want to tell my dad, but I don't know how. I don't know how. And on the 7th day, I walked into my dad's house, and he said to me, Aleesha, your younger brother, Jason, called me today and told me that he was sexually abused by your grandfather when he was younger, and that he finally had the strength, because he had been holding that secret, trying to keep my parents' marriage together. But since my mother divorced my dad, my younger brother finally had the courage to speak up. So here I am for 7 days praying, how do I tell my dad? How do I tell my dad? And my dad asked me when I walk into the room. So the moment he asked me, I had tears flowing from my face. And it was like God telling me, here you go. Like, you've been asking, here you go. So yeah, it was my brother's strength that actually allowed me to share my story. And I told my dad about my abuse and everything I've been through. And yes, he was hurt, and he felt like he failed as a parent because he didn't get to see the signs. But I just really appreciated him because he helped me tell somebody. He told me that I needed to go on social media and to share my story with the world. And he told me to name names and show pictures of my family. And I told him I can't do that. I said, I can't throw my family under the bus. And he said, I'm sorry to tell you, that's not your family. He said, family wouldn't turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to you when you need help. And it was like right there at that moment that I had a awakening that, wow, like my whole life, I felt like I was protecting my family, like they were the victims, like I was the hero that was keeping everything together. And it wasn't until he said that I realized how messed up and what a betrayal and the whole situation, how it really was, of me coming forward and nobody helping me.
Let me tell you something. You may already know this. If you don't remember it, you mentioned that on the 7th day, your
Mm-hmm.
father came to you
Mm-hmm.
and revealed the secret that you couldn't express beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
7 is a symbolic number biblically, whether you're looking at Near Eastern or Israeli culture, wherever. And I believe you are faith based and you had some anger at God. But you do know that 7 is the number that communicates a sense of fullness and completeness. It is oftentimes in spiritual ways and biblical ways connected with intuition, wisdom, and your own self awareness and spiritual revelations. It also is a number that represents big shifts. If you notice, we separate our weeks, our days by the number 7. 7 is often referred to whenever we're talking about transitions to completeness. So I won't cast much more conversation around your father coming to you on the 7th day than to say that for you, that was significant, not just that he did it, but how and when he did it and the impact from that. Listening to you talk about navigating through what has to have been excruciating backlash, not only from your grandfather who committed this to you, but from your own family, is very painful for me. And so allow me, please, to just thank you, even with the many conversations you've had and the deep and valuable work you're doing in this arena, to hold yourself together and to share with us, to live and relive experiences that no one should have to have. You even expressed, I think, previously somewhere, Aleesha, that a child who experiences abuse perceives it through the lens of their innocence. Let's elaborate a little bit on this paradigm, not so much only to share from what it was for you and how you came to this understanding or this perspective. Also, and I think importantly so, for someone who's listening who has not yet reached this level of comprehension.
Yes, I read in a survivor's book, and I wish I knew which one. But it said actually that the earliest memories of abuse that you remember, your mind frame stays that age even when you're an adult. So even though, I'm in my 30s, yeah, I still sometimes feel like a 5-year-old little girl. So it's really complex. A lot of survivors of abuse actually block out their childhood because of all the abuse. So I don't really know too much about my childhood. I can see pictures of myself and not even remember, having that birthday party or going to Disneyland because my mind has blocked everything out. But yes, it wasn't until talking to my dad that he helped me discover that I was the victim in this situation, feeling so long that, again, my grandfather was the sick old white man that I had to protect from going to jail. And I had to protect my mom because she knew about it. And if my dad knew, then my dad was going to get mad at her. So it just takes reevaluating what happened to you as an adult for you to shift your mind from a child to an adult. Like I said, I have 50, 60, 70-year-old people that write me and say that they still haven't told and they're not going to tell. They're going to take the secret to the grave. And that's what happens, is a lot of people do that. And so they don't explore, what happened to them. That's when I finally started feeling like Aleesha. Walking around, I always felt like an empty shell. I was just always down and depressed. But now, like, I feel confident, I feel strong. And that's why I started Tell Somebody, was because the moment I told my dad what happened to me, I had an immediate weight and burden just lifted off my shoulders that I had been searching the last 20 years.
Was your grandfather alive when you told your dad?
No, he
So
wasn't.
that was part of the freedom, perchance,
That
you
was
had
part of the freedom.
from him not seeking retaliation, revenge, or,
Yeah.
completion for you.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that, because there's a lot of survivors that are speaking up right now whose abusers are still alive. So, it is very brave for them to do things like that. But yes, my grandfather, him being dead, I will say that before he died, I thought that once he died, all that pain and anger and disgust was going to get off me, but it didn't. It didn't. So there are people that believe once their abuser dies that they won't feel that burden or shame anymore. But it's not until you speak up and tell your story and get it off your chest and explore everything that you're going to be able to start healing.
Right. And it's often said that children should persistently tell their story until they are heard. After grappling with such trauma in your own life, how do you teach ways of creating a safe space for communicating and validating a child's concerns?
Well, I actually came out with a children's book. It's called Tell Somebody, based off of my story. Me and my daughter are in the back, and they actually turned us into cartoon characters. So my daughter's in the book too. I made a tool that I needed when I was younger, because DARE comes to schools and they talk about drugs, but nobody comes to school and talks about sexual abuse. Even in class, when you're learning about sex ed, they never teach about molestation. They never teach about a family member touching you and what you're supposed to do. So I never learned it. So I actually came out with
let's go
okay.
deeper. Let's go
Okay.
deeper, because your children's book, Tell Somebody, Volume 1, offers a beacon of light for many people. What are some of the core lessons that you are teaching children in this book?
Well, the main thing is that these are your private areas and that nobody is supposed to touch you here. So a lot of people don't even know that the mouth is a private area, but the mouth is a private area. And then the rest of my story gives kids situations that they could be in that they don't know is abuse. Like if you're in the shower, nobody's supposed to be watching you. If they are, ask them to leave and tell somebody. If you're sleeping at a friend's house and you wake up and someone's touching you, ask them to stop and tell somebody. So it's just like all different situations that I was in. Even if someone gives you gifts and asks you not to tell somebody, because that's something big too. My grandfather would give me gifts. Oh, don't tell your parents I got you this. It's forming a bond and a trust. So that's basically what it is. No one's allowed to take pictures of you when you're naked. If somebody asks you to like sit on their lap when people aren't around, tell them no and tell somebody. But my main message on the last page just tells kids, if anyone touches you or asks you to touch them or threatens you or makes you feel uncomfortable, tell somebody. You will not get in trouble for telling, even if the person is someone you know and love. You should always tell somebody, because your safety always comes first. Tell somebody.
Let me ask you this, and
Okay.
kudos to this messaging. Let me ask you this. Many children are living in families, homes, communities, faith-based and not, geopolitical cultures, where the family honor is looked upon as the important thing. And oftentimes, many dishonorable things can happen inside of that. How do you address, or do you address, do you have the legal or the legitimate ability to express to and address to children, if you tell someone and they don't believe you, to tell someone else? Because I kept hearing you say, tell somebody.
Yes, but I told somebody.
I thought that needs to be a song. Tell somebody.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And it should be a song, but it needs a second part that says, perchance it needs that says, and if they don't listen, tell somebody else. If they don't help you, tell somebody else. If they don't believe you, tell somebody else. Can you legitimately or legally do that? And would a school allow that done, from the risk involved of impacting people's personal rights with their children and cultures?
Right. So first, I wrote this book 5 years ago. So I'm actually going to reach out to my publisher and see if I can add in there, if somebody doesn't listen, tell again. But yes, when I go to schools and events and I talk to kids and I read this book, I do have that conversation with them. They ask all the time, well, who can we tell? So we have that conversation. You could tell your teachers, you could tell a nurse at school, you can tell a counselor, you could tell a police officer, a firefighter. Like, we tell them the different people that they can tell. And I do tell them, if somebody doesn't listen, tell again. What I really love about my book is it's so easy that 3-year-olds can understand it, 10-year-olds can understand it, So I went to a school and I was able to put my book on a projector, and they brought all the kids in the auditorium. So I was able to teach a school of 600 kids from kindergarten to 8th grade about Tell Somebody. And it was something that they all understood.
This is a gift. This is a gift
Yeah.
that you'll never know exponentially how well, how deep, how emphatically it helped someone.
Yeah.
Aleesha, you were featured on the Iyanla Fix My Life show
Yeah.
with Iyanla Vanzant, and
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey praises you as the perfect role model for turning pain into power. By the way, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
You've shown remarkable role modeling through resilience. What were you looking to share differently by writing your, or different by writing your additional book, In Silenced Abuse, Tell Somebody?
Okay, so yes, this is my memoir, In Silenced Abuse, Tell Somebody. And I wrote this book to honestly just give courage and motivation to other survivors. When I first started, when I first shared my story with my dad, he told me to put my story on social media. And I was scared, but I did it anyways. But then I logged off because I didn't know what people were going to say. The next day when I logged on, I had like over 500,000 views, 400,000 comments, 200,000 friend requests. It was going viral. And that was the first time that I realized, wow, it's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, I actually read that the average child abuser is a middle-aged white man who's college educated, has children, and that was my grandfather. So I grew up thinking only white men molested. I didn't think other races did. And it wasn't until I shared my story and people were writing me back that I saw it happens in every race, every culture, every religion. It happens everywhere. And so right when I started Tell Somebody, my mother and her aunts, they actually disowned me. They actually changed their phone numbers and they blocked me on their social media. I think they couldn't handle what was going on. And then my dad died. I was actually sitting at home and a police officer came over and he said, I'm sorry to tell you, your dad just hit a tree 5 minutes down the road and he died instantly. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So now, I've told this story. I've started Tell Somebody, and it's just me and my 5-year-old daughter. I don't have the support of my mother and her family.
But your dad lived to lift you to this victory, and he
Yes.
saw you begin the process.
Yes, he saw me begin the process. Yes, he did. And I actually, before he died, I was able to buy a shirt that said Tell Somebody. And I bought it for him and my daughter, and I posted it on social media. And again, it went viral and everyone was like, I want to Tell Somebody shirt. I want to Tell Somebody shirt. So I also make Tell Somebody shirts. But yes, after he passed away, I buried him in Louisiana, and I buried him in a Tell Somebody shirt. And he was also in the Air Force, so I buried him in his Air Force outfit on top of his Tell Somebody shirt. While I was down there in Louisiana, though, somebody kept zipping my dad's jacket up to hide the Tell Somebody shirt. And I later found out after the funeral from my aunts, my dad's sisters, whose house I was staying at during the funeral, that they were upset with me. They told me that I embarrassed them and all their family because down south, you get buried in a 3-piece suit. So for me to have him in a Tell Somebody shirt was disrespectful. They told me it's a time and place for everything, and bringing awareness to child abuse during that time wasn't the time. And they told me to lose their phone numbers. They said, we don't want anything to do with you. So I really sat back and thought to myself, how me just sharing my truth, what happened to me, caused me to be the black sheep of the family, where my mom's side and my dad's side disowned me. And so that's what gave me the strength and courage to write In Silenced Abuse, because I wanted to show other survivors who are also still holding the secret, oh, I want to keep my family together. If once I tell, you guys don't even want anything to do with me, I can't believe I held that in so long for you. there's so many survivors living their life for other people. And I want survivors to start living their life for themselves, even if that means being the black sheep of the family.
Well,
Because
let me just tell you one thing about how you buried your daddy, okay?
okay.
You buried him dressed the way God will receive him. You buried your dad dressed in a shirt that showed his service to his family, to his children. And you dressed him in a suit that showed his service to his country and to his world. He
Yeah.
lived the life of a hero, and you buried him in the armor of a
Thank
hero.
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know that. I know he's proud walking around up in heaven showing his shirts and his outfits. I know.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And God had him seen before he arrived. Okay. So
Mhm.
writing these books has been a tremendous journey for you, and an incredible teaching and life-saving result for those who are reading it. Talk with me about the personal growth that you experienced through writing your books. Let me tell you, the poise and the clarity you're bringing to this conversation is, even in this moment, perhaps saving lives. One thing we talk about when we talk about sexual abuse and child abuse is from the voice of the survivors. What you're doing is also sharing voice, Aleesha, for the many who don't survive and who never get mentioned for the pain of it. How different was writing your book for you than what we are taught to do as simply journaling?
It was such a healing experience because I got to tell my story and the whole story, and I got to tell the truth. And it didn't matter if it offended anybody because it was my story. And I really got motivated again because my father actually confided in me that he was molested as a child. When he was in Louisiana, he was actually an altar boy at his church. And he told me that the preacher used to abuse him and take him in the room and give him the wine to drink. And then he would abuse him. And I asked my dad, well, did you ever tell anybody? And he said no, because back then
Aleesha, for those in our family who come from many cultures and many
yeah.
country languages, who are not familiar with altar boys, give them a little understanding of what an altar boy is and the
Okay.
relative age you must be an altar boy
My
when your
dad
father was being abused.
Okay, my dad told me he was abused starting at age 8 until I believe he was 10 or 11. An altar boy, he would go to church and he would get a robe and he would be in charge of passing out the wine and the communion crackers to the other people at the church. So he spent a lot of time in the back with the preachers, just learning and doing Bible study and just being away, being secluded. Yeah.
And
Um,
so,
so I asked him, did you ever tell anybody? And he said no, because down south in Louisiana, you don't talk about those kind of things. And you also don't accuse a white man of doing it because his abuser was a white man. So my father was abused, my mother was abused, I was abused, my younger brother was abused, and my older brother was sexually abused when he was younger by a babysitter. So all the people in my immediate family have all been sexually abused. And so if my family is like that, I
let
know
me
there
say
are,
something.
okay,
Let me
okay,
say something before you make the if then
okay,
statement.
okay.
You said, my full immediate family are
Yeah,
in a circle of abuse.
yeah.
Relatively, that's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Let's correct that, because
Okay.
prior to coming on to this conversation, you shared with me that you have two gorgeous sets of twins and you have an older daughter. And
Yes.
you have a husband who, even as we're talking, are with those beautiful children right now. I
Yes.
want to make sure that as we continue this conversation, for every member of our family who's listening to this, it is not something that has to be generational, even though it has been generational. You have a husband who is loving, who is trusted with your daughters, and who continues to uplift you and allow you to know that all men are not wired to abuse. And so
Yes.
I think it's important at this point in our conversation for you to just talk a little bit as comfortably as you can be about your decision not to give up on loving men. And more emphatically, I think, Aleesha, your faith and your confidence and your discretion in selecting a man who you can give your trust as well as your love to.
Okay. Well, again, it has to do with God. When I was 28, I prayed and I said, God, please send me my husband. I'm tired of, dating and nothing coming from it. Like, I want somebody who respects me and can uplift me and I can trust and, we can be something. And a couple of days later, I got a message from my husband. So for me, I feel like that was God given. So sometimes if he gets on my nerves, I always just show him and shower him with love because I feel like he's my gift from God. Like he gave him to me. I will say that a lot of child abusers do target single mothers because they said single mothers are vulnerable. They might be a little more not desperate, but they want a man, they want comfort, they want a relationship. And child abusers find mothers with children as easy access because now they're around your children. So after I didn't work out with my first child's father, I was very skeptical about whatever man I was going to bring into my life to be around my 5-year-old daughter because I didn't want what happened to me to happen to her. So even with my husband, I let him know up front. And that's actually what I tell parents. When you're meeting a man, when you are dropping your kids off at a slumber party, let the other person know, like, hey, like, I'm a survivor of abuse. I've taught my kids, how to protect themselves, like, kind of bring the awareness so that they don't even try to, do anything. So that's what I did with him. I let him know what happened to me and how I educated my children so that I could try to prevent anything. Yeah.
And through social media, you've openly shared stories of abused survivors, offering hope to victims of sexual abuse.
Yeah.
I think sharing some instances where stories have influenced or changed someone's life right here can be really helpful. Perchance you have some in mind.
Yes. So the first 2 or 3 years of Tell Somebody, I just told my story. It was just me, me, me. And one day somebody sent me a picture of them holding a sign that said Tell Somebody, and they included their story of abuse. And I thought that was so cool. So I posted it. And the next day I had 5 more people in my messages with signs and sharing their story. So ever since then, that's what I do. I try every day to share a different survivor story. They're so brave because, again, most of them show their face. They always tell who abused them. I like it because it lets you know you're not alone. It lets you know that the feelings that you have, of being disgusted or shame or guilt, other survivors feel the same thing. But yeah, most of the stories get real uplifted at the end and they talk about their triumph and how they healed and are starting nonprofits and starting books, making books, helping people in their community. And I just really appreciate that because it uplifts the other readers to let them know that, yeah, you can overcome. Like, this is something that happened to you, but it's not something that defines you. And I just want to say that when I was younger, my teachers all told my mom that I am a leader, but that I have, why are you crying?
Go on.
My teachers told my mom when I was growing up that I'm a leader and that I just have to lead people in the positive aspect, because I was, like I said, a little troublemaker. When I was younger, my grandfather used to always ask me, what do you want to be when you get older? And every year I would tell him, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher. And he always told me, no, teachers don't make enough money. You need to be a doctor or a lawyer. So to now, fast forward all these years and see that I'm a teacher, what my grandfather told me not to be, and I'm teaching the world about what he did. And now I'm saving people from what he did.
That's
So
why I'm crying.
yeah.
I mean, when you go through all of the horrible things, there's just this thing, the way I'm wired, Aleesha, that I can look at the most difficult, deepest circumstance and stoically work it through. But the minute the victories start to happen, I'm that teary church lady. So when the victories start to happen, I'm crying with joy.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why I'm crying, baby. That's why I'm
Yeah.
crying.
Yeah.
And you keep teaching. You keep teaching. I mean, as a powerful force in this crucial advocacy, there have to be some key entities you believe society and individuals must focus on in order to eradicate child sexual abuse. I say eradicate in faith that it can happen, not lessen for fear that it can't. What do you think are some of the key entities that we must focus on?
It's education. That's really what it is. Parents say to me, they write me, well, what signs should I be looking for? You know, what should I be looking for that my kids are doing, maybe wetting the bed or, you know, afraid of the dark? What signs? And I tell them the signs, but then I tell them, instead of waiting for the signs, go talk to them. Go talk to them right now. Like, if you, who's ever watching, you know, this, when you're watching this, when you're done, go talk to your children and ask them, if has anyone ever touched them, threaten them, let them know that you're their support, you'll help them, and talk to them. And it all happens with education. My grandfather, the first time he touched me in my private area, if I would have looked at him and said, hey, my mom and dad told me no one's supposed to touch me there, so stop, or I'm gonna tell somebody, you know, do you think he would have continued to abuse me?
Right,
No.
right,
It's education.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have familiarity or knowledge to this question. I'll ask it out loud just for the vetting of it by those of us who care about this deeply. What is the arrest/incarceration or penalty percentage for people? Because not only men are child abusers who are brought up and or found guilty for child abuse. What does it look like?
Well, now I want to go on Google and find the exact answer, because I do my research on that.
Yes,
And I
yes,
have found that first, they said that 70% of sexual abuse victims don't tell. So if
right,
70% of children aren't even telling, then the child abusers can't even go to jail.
right,
But what I will say is that a lot of the research that I have been doing, even though they're getting caught, they're getting minimum sentences, they're getting probation, they're getting a year, they're getting 2 years. Here's a good thing. Hold on, because now I have to know what is it Kelly's?
please, yes, it's vital to know.
Okay. Oh no, that's okay. That's Megan's Law. Oh yeah, Megan's Law. Okay. meganslaw.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can type in your address and see all the child sexual abuse registered offenders around your area.
So
And
if someone is brought up and found to be through the legal system child abuser,
Yeah.
then they do get listed regardless
Yeah.
of what penalty
Yeah.
or rehabilitation
Yeah.
process they
Yeah.
enter from.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And like I said, you will be surprised if you go on and see your address and it shows you on the map every child sexual offender that lives around you. And I'm talking about no matter what address you type in, there are hundreds of them
Okay, so some of
everywhere.
the some of the high end zip codes like Beverly Hills. What's that? 90210.
Yeah.
Google it and see.
Okay. Okay. Megan's Law.
We live.
Okay. Here we go. Search offenders. Here we go.
Yes, please talk the process out so people who are listening and not simply looking can know. You went into Google and what did you search?
I typed in Megan's Law. So
And once you got there, what did you put in?
there on the side it says search offenders.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm doing now, but now it's making me just prove I'm not a robot before I can log in.
Right.
Okay. So then it gives you a map. And over on the side, you type in your zip code.
So
So
we're using 90210 simply because it's a high-end address.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Oh, it wants you to type in a little bit more information than 90210. It wants you to type in, oh no, city search zip code. Okay, yeah, here we go, zip code. Here we go, 90210 search. Okay. Okay, that's 90210. Oh man, I'm so mad that we're live and it's like messing
That's
up.
okay. If you can just describe the process, though, that's helpful.
Well,
Even if you don't complete it
there's
here.
actually not a lot in Beverly Hills, because it just shows one blue mark right there, and
Yeah.
that's a person. But if you click the mark, it'll actually show you the person's picture, and it shows you their age, their height, and what they did, and how long they went to jail for. So Beverly Hills is really good. It looks like you guys aren't letting too many people come in over there. But if I typed in like the Bay Area where I'm from, like San Francisco, for example, then it would come up with way more.
So we've got that process down, and I think it's helpful for people to understand that they can link into Megan's Law, and then they can follow. It's pretty descriptive about the process to follow to search your area or areas you may be going into on vacation or visiting relatives or your children going off to schools or camp programs. It can be very helpful, and it should be part of the parent toolkit.
Also, children go missing. The police check this offender registry first to see if there's any child abusers in the area, and they actually go to their houses to look and see if they had anything to do with it.
Aleesha, your transformation from pain to power is absolutely, as Miss Oprah said, phenomenal. Share a little bit about any practices or approaches that supported you on this journey. You're talking a lot about the things you've done and accomplished, and we didn't lean in a lot on your brother. We respect his ability to tell his own story. We applaud him for the role he's played in yours, meaning yours singularly and yours in couple with him. There's some practices and approaches that certainly you engaged that helped you through this, especially as you didn't have immediate family then who were doing that. Talk about those.
Okay. Yes. When my father first died, it gave me motivation to go 110%. So I was just always on the run, always on the run. And it wasn't until I went on the Iyanla Fix My Life show where Iyanla told me that I hadn't had time to grieve yet. And she told me to actually take a step back from everything I was doing and just get some me time for a little bit. So for about 6 months, I actually did that. I stepped back from everything and I just kind of sat in, everything that was going on, with my dad not being there and my family not being around, my childhood abuse. And so I just did a lot of self-reflecting. I read a lot of books. I went on YouTube and I looked at a lot of self-help, getting my confidence back, taking care of me, like loving on myself, something that, I didn't really get as a child, just treating myself good, taking myself out, and just really realizing that it wasn't my fault. So I guess healing looks different for everybody. I always tell people at the end of my stories to go to counseling or therapy, because counseling and therapy helps a lot, especially for people who haven't talked about it before. But really, besides that, helping people with Tell Somebody, writing this book, seeing the amount of people that send me stories every day, seeing the kids' faces when I go to their schools, it just really also brought a healing to me, knowing that just my story, helped others. So when I tell people my story and they immediately say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you," I tell them, "I'm sorry too. But if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be able to bring awareness to this
Oh,
topic." And for
mm.
me, honestly, and I'm not like taking away from anybody's job, because there's, everyone has their own purpose in life. But for me, I honestly feel like child sexual abuse is one of, if not the worst thing in the world that goes on, because children are so innocent and they can't protect themselves. And so for me, it's an honor to be able to be one of the few that are bringing the topic to the forefront and bringing awareness every day and helping people. Like, I don't really see a job that I would rather do than this.
And that's the paradox of it, that you'd rather this job not ever exist, that it does, you receive doing it with honor.
Yeah.
So many survivors, Aleesha, are encountering mental health challenges, and they include but aren't limited to depression, PTSD, substance abuse. Now, you've got an organization called the Tell Somebody Movement. Does your organization provide an embrace of support for these types of illnesses, conditions, or circumstances? And if you will just talk about it a little bit as an outreach opportunity for even someone who's listening right now who may want to approach you.
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started Tell Somebody, and even still right now, I don't have a big team. It's kind of just me. So I'm navigating, and I'm also praying to God that He helps bring, people into my life that can help me get it to that level. What I really would love is, Tell Somebody chapter in every state, where survivors could even meet maybe once a month with other survivors in their state, and get a support group. They can even go to court with each other. I want to help get therapists and lawyers, but I haven't got to that yet. Right now, it's more so just Aleesha with the message to tell somebody. But I am, like I said, encouraging people to go to therapy and counseling. But I do one day want to have more resources for people. But on my website, I do include other organizations like RAIN and different websites that do facilitate that. So when they come to my page, they can just click that one and go somewhere else.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful that you're amplifying this support through those organizations that reputably are addressing it right now. So thank you
Mhm.
for that. Um, Miss Aleesha Barlow,
Yeah.
Mrs. on the private, what would you say to young Aleesha, knowing what you know now?
Um, tell somebody.
Yeah,
Tell somebody else. Tell your dad.
yeah.
Tell your dad.
And finally, before we go to 4 for 4, what's the significant message you want people to internalize when they hear your story or read your books?
It's time to tell somebody. Don't take that secret to the grave. I want you to heal, and that comes with telling somebody. And even if you tell somebody, you might not get the response that you're looking for from somebody else, like family, but it's not about them. It's about you. It's about you telling your story, you getting your truth out, because you matter, your story matters, your voice matters. And this is not something for our children to have to break. This is something for us to break. The generational curse. It's time to tell somebody.
Thank you so much, Aleesha, for not allowing this wickedness. Some may say illness, others may say just horrible behavior of adults in your life, steal the childhood in your heart. Thank you so much for staying evergreen to your purpose, and thank you for phenomenally addressing it. Are you ready to have some fun now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go 4 for 4. I'm going to ask you 4 questions to which you'll give me 4 answers, and no answer is inappropriate nor wrong. The first question is, you get to have 4 people for dinner from any time present alive to pass through history. Who's at your table and why?
So the first person is God, because I want to thank him for life. The second person is Jesus, because I want to thank him for dying for our sins. The third person would be my grandfather, because I would tell him that I forgive him. And the fourth person would be my dad, and I would just show him what he helped me start. We forgot the tissues, Janice.
I'm gonna get mine. You do you. Oh God.
Right here.
Ah. Okay, here we go. Good thing it wasn't a big makeup day for me. Girl, if I had on lashes right now. Okay, uh, let's go 2 for 4. Um,
Okay.
what 4 pieces of music or artists are you listening to? Oh, Jesus, right now, and why?
So actually right now I'm not listening to music. I actually listened to music a lot growing up. I know music can take you out of a depression, which is really good, but I also just learned how much what you listen to and what you consume, has to do with your energy and how you look at life. And so right now, instead of listening to music, I just, like I said, watch YouTube videos and try to just learn about things that can help me like elevate in life and get smarter in life and self-esteem and self-love. So,
I think that's so beautiful. When you are in the mood for music, though, let's be reminded of 2 things:
okay.
the rhythm of music. Remember, there are only 7 notes, and think
Yeah.
of all the compositions that have been created. You have the classicals that don't bring words and allow you to put your own stories and emotions to the music and the movement. The other thing I'd encourage you to is there are some very inspiring songs. Just recently, at my Women's Leadership Board at Harvard University, we were addressing Harvard's response to the Israel Hamas war and to the students who have a right to voice there, and where does that voice begin and end its rights, and without impeding other people's. And I was able to read the lyrics of a song by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warren called Lord. It's called "Lift Us Up," where we belong. So there are some songs that have been written that have beautiful messaging to them. So as you're motivated to reintroduce music that allows you to continue your growth and Feed your body with positive messaging. Look deliberately for those. And you're a Google queen, so you can actually
Mhm.
Google
Yeah,
uplifting songs, teaching
yeah,
songs. And then you also are faith based. Remember the old school gospel songs. All
yeah.
of them weren't about Jesus died and suffering the pain. Many of them speak to the promise, and that promise does not have to be afterlife on earth. It can be as you give life to earth. Is that helpful to you?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm gonna Google some and find some.
Yeah, it'll be wonderful to you. You don't have to interrupt your love of music with lyrics either if you choose not to. Just be
Mhm.
remembered that there are beautiful lyrics and you got
Yeah,
children in your home who can benefit from music because we learn songs quicker than we learn poems. We learn
yeah.
poems quicker
Okay,
than we learn stories. So
okay.
you want to give them that. And then let's go 3 for 4. What 4 books do you recommend our family read and why?
That's my
Yes,
children's book
you
because the
better
kids
tell
need to know.
somebody.
You better tell somebody.
Yeah,
In silence abuse, because that's what time it
yes.
is. Time to end some silence abuse. On my
By the way,
website.
I strongly recommend those as well, along with it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. On my website, I have an ebook about 10 things, 10 ways to up your self-esteem, because a lot of survivors of abuse don't have self-esteem. So it's all about getting that back. And the fourth book would be the Bible. Because just like for words, I know some people they say, oh, well, everything in the Bible isn't real. Like, how do you know people didn't just, write certain things? But even like the 10 commandments, don't steal, don't kill, like there's so many gems in there that even if it was a book that somebody made up, like it's still good principles that you should still live by. So the Bible, because that makes me have hope too when I read certain verses.
Oh, you know what? I just love you. I'm adopting you into my circle
I
of
was just
pups.
about to say, girl, do you need another kid? Because
I'm just adopting you in, just adopting you in.
I'm coming. I'm
Alicia,
coming.
let's go 4 for 4 before those beautiful children start to knock on your door of your studio, okay? And ask for
Okay.
their mommy back. And
Okay.
this is, please share with us 4 pieces of advice you have that you've not yet shared in this conversation. And if any of that advice was gifted to you, show homage by mentioning the author.
Okay. The first thing is when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. A lot of times we see red flags and we still associate with that person. My dad used to tell me that if somebody does something bad to you, as long as you're still alive, that was just a cheap price for the lesson that you learned of
Wow. So that first
not.
one was Maya, and the second one is your dad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I put them together in one. That
Yeah,
was one.
that's
So
right. That's
yeah,
right. They fit
yeah,
well.
yes, yes. The next one is from
Wait,
my dad.
expand a little bit on
Okay.
your dad's point about if you're alive. It was
Okay. So like for example, if I'm friends with somebody and they come to my house and maybe they steal something from me and then they leave and they don't answer my phone call. So I know that they're a thief. The $10 that they stole from me, that was a cheap price. That was nothing to learn the valuable lesson of I'm glad they showed me who they were, so I know not to trust them and have them around again.
right. I see the
So,
and I see the beautiful connection
yeah.
between Maya and your father's lesson. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. The next one is from my dad again. He had a lot of good gems, but he said, you can't squeeze blood from a turnip. So don't stress over what you don't have at the moment or what you can't do. Just keep going, just don't stress over it because stress kills.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and it really is in life. Oftentimes, most times, I'd say in my circumstance, every time, as important to know what's not there as what is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Your
That's
dad is
good.
spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. And the next one, the third one is every day live right. because God's watching.
Mm. Mm.
And because if you really move and feel like God is in the room with you watching, it will help you with your integrity, and it'll just help you be a better person. And so that's what I try to tell people: just live right because God's watching. You want to be on like the right side of history at the end of the day. And the last thing I want to tell people is to tell somebody, because it's how you heal.
It truly is. Listen, you are a light to this world. I could go on and on effusively. Please hear me to say how very valuable every conversation you give, whether through social media, whether in front of classrooms, or simply in your own home to those beautiful children you now have responsibility to teach, to tell somebody. You are a gem to this world. It is wonderful. With your permission, I'd like to consider you a new friend. And if you give me that permission to say friend from my heart to your home, thank you.
Thank you. Friend, girl, you're my new mom. We already discussed
Hey,
that.
hey.
Oh, I did just want to just say that real quick, is that when I post these stories, I get all these comments, but a comment that really stood out to me
Mhm.
was somebody said, my family has never wronged me, so I can't relate with you guys. And when
Mm.
they said that, it really struck me, because even you with your story, I did my research on you. You started with your mom's help.
Mhm.
You already had the drive and determination, but your mom helped you.
Mhm.
And for me,
And I had a mom and dad in my home who were highly
okay,
supportive and
okay,
loving. It was
loving.
difficult for me. This person let me, maybe their choice of wording
Mhm,
was more direct. I don't know. But I will tell you, when I went away to university,
mhm,
well, I was in Project Upward Bound. Okay. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you can Google that too, my Google friend. And it was a program, government sponsored, federally sponsored, for gifted students who came from economic circumstances that might not necessarily lend them an immediate opportunity into childhood experiences as well as university. And so mom and dad said all 11 of their children, one mom, one dad, were going to go to university if he had to break the timber out of the house and sell it for firewood in the community. That's how determined they were as a couple that we would be educated. And they were phenomenal people, very smart people, as well as loving and guiding. So I had, if you would, kind of Norman Rockwellian childhood, Aleesha, just on a lower budget. Okay.
okay, okay.
But we didn't know we weren't rich. We
Yeah.
had as much, if not more, than most of our neighbors. And mom said, you're doing well if you have something to share. And we always had enough to share. The point I was going toward you with around the person who posted they couldn't relate to your story. When I went away to North Carolina A&T, I get right, uh, my freshman year, official freshman year, I met some young ladies from what we called up north, which was, Maryland and above, DC and above, along the East Coast. And I had a couple of them who shared that they didn't like their moms, or they were saying negative things. I heard more cursing than I'd ever heard in my life. So I was like, the awakening or the re-education process that we all get when we go to university, and those of us who do. And Aleesha, it scared me. I felt dirty. I wanted to go shower it off, what they said. And I prayed about them, and I just felt as though I had been placed in a horror. You know how you say you felt icky with
Mhm,
it felt all, not to that degree. Please don't hear me to make, but that
mhm,
was my level of experience to what they were saying, because I'd grown up in such a loving home, parents who were aligned with each other and highly faith based in a way that taught us that you honor. You talked about those 10 commandments.
mhm,
One of
mhm.
them is about honoring your mother and father for all the
Yeah.
days of your lives, right? It took me maturity to understand they were coming from a different circumstance. So they had a different experience, a different perspective, and that us sharing our various perspectives and experiences helped us to be full of people for a future world. So I don't know where that person was coming from, but I can tell you it shocked me as a young woman, being the first time I ever heard anybody say something out loud negative in a derogatory way about their parents. Naturally, I heard, oh, mama made me do this, or oh, I'm mad with daddy. Those are childhood things. But to hear somebody profoundly speak in a negative way that suggested they wanted separation from their parents happened for me at university. And so that's why maybe again the tears were happening too, because I'm looking at this incredibly beautiful woman who I cannot imagine anybody would want to have in a hug circle in their life. And you're sharing things that happened to you that should not have happened to you nor anybody else in the world. I don't know if this helps you to receive this person's comment. That's not my goal, but I do pray that, and I do, my daughter taught me early in her life, Mom, when you say but, it just means to me that everything you just said isn't true. you know so let me say, and I believe that you take everything that you receive and you polish it. Diamonds are just ugly pieces of rock until we shine them and allow us to see the brightness. And that's what I believe you do with every experience. And maybe that experience, as you said, did help you to be who you are and to give the way you give. I offer you this so that you can add it to your cadre of as you go on and continue to fight for the rights and the freedom children have from abuse. And I can't thank you enough. I cannot thank you enough. What do they say, Aleesha? Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. And
You're
heal
an
people,
example.
heal people.
That's where I'm going. You're an example of a healed person healing people. And I just, ooh, can you feel how much I'm sending you love right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. That's just what I was going to just say, was when he said that he couldn't relate to me because his family didn't do him wrongdoing. I realized that child sexual abuse not only affects you because of the actual abuse, but it goes further than that. It prevents you from having the loving family that you were destined to have. So now you don't have the mom that you could reach out to when you need something because you have that strained relationship, or you don't have the aunt that you could reach out to that so yeah, so I just appreciate you just even bringing me on your platform, just letting me share, the message or tell somebody. Even with my own mom, she sees like the magnitude of the people that I'm helping. But even when I told her I was going to be speaking with you, she just says, like, cool. She can't bring herself to say, like, I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job. Because at the end of the day, I'm sharing a story that has to do with her and her family. So it's still hard for her to internalize that. So even when I hear from other people that they're proud of me, it really touches me. So I
And
appreciate
when she doesn't tell you, she may know in herself. No doubt she knows.
Yeah, I know
You
she
pray
does
for
too.
her too. You
Yeah, I
pray for
do. I do.
okay.
I do.
She has to heal as well.
Yeah.
Girlfriend, let's not let this be the last time we talk.
Okay.
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 And thank your hubby and your children for being so well behaved and sharing your time with us from your studio.
I will. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And when you turn this off, I don't know if you could stop recording. I can show you my kids. Oh, that was so cool. I didn't know I needed. Yeah. Well, yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to dial back in and do that because when we
Okay.
finish,
Yeah.
I'm going to record your intro to this
Okay.
session. But
Okay.
Christy or Nathan can connect you and me so we can have a fun chat and I can
Okay.
get to see the kiddies and meet them.
Okay.
And thank you for not
Okay.
splashing your kids on social media.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.